Hello, hello.
Do you guys want to come sit? Uh-oh, we can't. We knocked this. We got to be careful here. Okay. All right. We've got lots of us here today. We're all very excited to see you.
Right on.
You can come have a
How are you guys doing? Did you guys get down to Lang Creek the other day?
We all went down to the creek. We were all there.
Oh, right on.
Is that where you are right now?
No, I'm back at our male hatchery. I brought a couple salmon with me though. Some chum for you guys to take a look at, and we'll do a little dissection on them.
Okay.
Right on.
I'm going to get everybody into their seats so that we can see you. Okay, everybody's going to come into their seats. So Mr. Barfay knows you're here.
I see you all, yeah.
Okay, so if you don't have a good view from where you're sitting and able to see the screen, you can shift your body. But we do need to be able to make sure everybody has a good view. Okay, if you're finishing your lunch, beware. And we're gonna let Mr. Barfay take over here, okay?
Right on.
All right, so everybody's got a good view, I think, from now here. Well, we're gonna go ahead.
All right. So, well, let's start with what the actual salmon is here.
That's a good view, isn't it?
So, do you guys know what kind of salmon this is?
We once
There we go.
And we saw that Sandy actually brought it on the shore.
Whoa, look at that, guys. Look at the fang. Look at the fangs. Look at the teeth.
So this is a chum salmon, and this is a male chum salmon. So the males in chums have the big teeth and the big nose on them called a kite. And that's kind of the easiest way to tell the male from the female, as well as it has the deeper body. The easiest way to tell a chum salmon are those vertical purple and white stripes on it. That it's unique to chum, and none of the other species will have those markings on them.
But if they're dead, then you can't tell because they're always white.
So outside the fish, a good thing to look at. I'm trying to get this in as close as I can without making this too strange, but we can take a look at the fins here. So that is the salmon's tail. It's also called a caudal fin.
So I hate things.
Ahead of that, we have that little fin there is called an adipose fin. And below that is called an anal fin. Right ahead of that is what's called the vent, which I'm dripping 1 second, is where the eggs and the milk from the males will come out. And that's how they lay the eggs into the stream. Next up, one of the things you'll see on whales and a lot of other animals in the ocean is called the dorsal fin, which is the big fin on the back there. Kind of helps it stay streamlined and in line. And then above that, we have pelvic fins and pectoral fins, which are pelvic fins there and pectoral fins. Trying to make sure I'm seeing this properly here. And back to the big nose and the big teeth. Do you guys have any questions about the fins and kind of what type of fish this is and all the outside stuff of the salmon?
Okay, Reese, you have a question? You want to come and put your face there so we can see you? No? Okay, Reese has a question for you.
Yeah. I missed it.
Which one is a female?
Yeah, so I have a female right here, which is the one we're going to do the dissection on. So you can see her body's a little bit more slender and her nose is a lot more rounded and flat. And so this one here is a female. So I brought one of each so we can show you, and you can kind of see the difference there.
Okay, cool. You want to come up here?
Internally, they look quite a bit different too. So, and that's what we'll get into with the skeins and the milk sacs of the fish. But they are, yeah, fair bit different anatomically speaking.
Okay, we've got a few more questions. Is that okay?
Absolutely.
Do
Okay.
all sea creatures that live in the sea have dorsal skins?
Do they have which skin, sorry?
Dorsal skins.
No, just a lot of the fish. So like jellyfish and starfish won't, or sea stars, sorry. But a lot of fish do, and a lot of sharks do, and more of the fast swimmers.
Okay, we got another one for you.
Yeah.
So what Ewan was talking about, so sea turtles like that don't have dorsal fins, right?
I missed that one too. It's you gotta speak quite loudly for me to hear you. Sorry.
Here he comes. It's okay. He's coming up
Perfect.
to you. And then you can see who you're talking to.
Sea turtles don't have dorsal fins, right? They
Nope.
don't have dorsal fins.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
If you have a question, it is best for you to come right up because then
Yeah.
Mr. Barclay can hear you and then he sees who he's talking to too. So George, how about you, Paul?
How do you know which one's boy or a girl?
Yeah. So, well, on the outsides of the fish, the easiest way to tell on most salmon species is the males tend to have the big nose like that, and it's called a kype. Is kind of that overbite from the top lip, and male chum have a lot bigger of teeth, and their body's a lot more broad. So from top to bottom, it's a lot wider of a fish. Okay. And then inside, the females will have eggs, and then the males will have milk. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Which one is a vegetarian? Which one is there any meat ones?
Of what they eat themselves?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Are they vegetarian for meat?
no, generally, each species has a little bit different of a diet, but it is mostly going to be animal based. So chum will actually eat a lot of krill and herring, and they do eat jellyfish as well. And then Chinook and coho will be mostly bait fish oriented with some krill in there as well. And then pink salmon and sockeye salmon eat predominantly krill, which krill are kind of these like small shrimp that there's quite a lot of in the ocean.
Do you want to go ahead and then we'll ask questions later?
That sounds good. Sure, we'll keep trucking ahead.
Sure. I still have a few kids with questions, but we're going to save them for a minute and then that way we can keep going.
Perfect. All right. So I'm going to take a little bit of a step back, and we're going to start cutting into a fish. So
That's gonna be fun.
yeah, we did some egg takes this morning. So at the hatchery, we do take eggs from the females to bring them back and raise them out to babies. So we've already taken the eggs from this one, but the egg sacs, which are called skeins, would have taken up a lot of the cavity in the fish, which I'm going to bring that in closer in a second. I'm just going to make a cut here so you can see in the cavity better. All right. So this is when it gets gooey. Let's see. So you can kind of see, let me move that fin. I wish my camera had a zoom on it, but you can see inside the body cavity there, which so most of that would have been taken up by eggs at this point. What you see on the back of the fish, you can see kind of the white running through the middle of it. It's called the fish's swim bladder. The swim bladder is what a salmon will use to control its buoyancy in the water. So what depth it's at in the water column. And what the females will do to help push the eggs out and express the eggs out is when they get closer to being ready to lay their eggs, they'll start to expand their swim bladder, which will help push the eggs out. All right, let's do some more cutting.
It's really gross for you to swallow. Look at it. Oh, it's really yucky.
It is a little yucky, yeah. So what I just took out, so this is one of the bigger organs inside the fish, is the fish's liver. So a fish's liver works pretty similar to how a human's liver would work, and it helps filter out toxins out of the food and out of the bloodstream. Yeah, you had a quick question?
Where's the heart in the fish's body?
I'll show you. We're gonna get to that. It's right ahead of this.
Okay.
On the back side of the liver, you can see that darker spot there. That's the fish's gallbladder. It's right on the liver. So I'm gonna give you one last look at that here, and then we'll move on and I'll show you the stomach, and I can grab this later, but so that's the fish's liver, and that's kind of the biggest organ in the fish.
Boys and girls, just remember he can hear us, right? So if we're mumbling a little bit too loud, we're not sure what's happening.
All right. So more interesting stuff here. It looks like a Halloween thing, but that is the fish's intestines, and its stomach is right on top there. Yeah. So
Cool.
the fish's stomach is capable of, just like people's, is capable of expanding quite a lot. So when salmon hit fresh water, their main focus is to spawn and to lay their eggs and to fertilize the eggs. So they stop eating, and after they've laid their eggs, they die, unfortunately. But that's why this stomach on this fish is so small and empty, is because it's not feeding anymore, because it's into the spawning phase and is in fresh water. Tailing off the end of that, you can see this kind of long tube that goes off the stomach. That's just what hooks up the intestines to the vent of the fish, so it can help expel feces. And you can see all the little arms on the intestines there. Yeah.
I eat fish.
Right at the bottom of that is the fish's spleen. This the little red guy there. Right on. Yeah, question?
Hey, come on around here so he can see you. We've got a question for you.
Yeah.
This is Ethan. He's coming up.
Hi, Ethan.
Hi. So you know how the bones and the blood protects the heart and the brain. Does it do that on the fish too?
Yeah, the bones and kind of the exoskeleton of the fish helps to protect all of its organs for sure. And the brain is in basically a full enclosure of bone to keep it as safe as it can be. Yeah, good question.
Okay, Owen, do you want to ask your question? Okay, Ty, do you want to come up?
How tiny is a fish's brain?
The fish's brain, they are fairly small. We might cut into one. It gets pretty messy to cut in, but so there's kind of the fish's head. It's only going to take up probably about a third of the space between. I wonder if I can get a good enough grip on it with one hand. So it's going to be between the eyes here and back a little bit, and it takes up probably about a little bit more than the size of a toonie. But it's rounder than that. It's not just flat like a toonie. Exactly.
Okay. Cool.
Okay, feel free to keep going there.
Okay. So we'll dive into the heart here next, because I know we had somebody wondering about that. So just ahead of where we took, let's see. So right at the front, it's kind of hard to see, is where the liver and the stomach are attached, and that comes down the fish's throat. But right ahead of that, and kind of just behind the gill plate inside, is the heart, which I'll grab out here.
No, don't do that. That'll be so gross.
And let's see if I can find better lighting for that. That is the heart there. So you can see where it connects is the white part, and that's a little bit more thicker and tendon-like.
That's so tiny.
And blood will pump into that, and then it'll pump out and through the rest of the fish. Yeah. So,
It's not that big. Wait.
and that, let me see if I can.
It's not even that tiny. It's not even that big.
So the heart, the heart comes right in between there, and it's kind of right in between the two front fins. It sits in its own little pocket up there.
What?
Yeah.
That is really creepy.
So we have a couple other little parts we can look at inside the fish. I'm going to make one more cut here.
I'm a little on. You did bleeding. I did this.
All right. So the other thing, so what a fish uses, so fish do kind of breathe underwater, and that they filter out dissolved oxygen in the water through their gills, which you can see there. And they have different layers of those gills, which you can kind of see are those red lines there. They're called gill rings. And they have about 4 layers of those that they use to get oxygen out of the water so they can breathe. And that oxygen goes into the fish's blood, and that helps them be able to move around and swim and do their thing. Any questions you guys want to do now, or I got, yeah.
Where is like the brain? Is it like in front or the back?
It's in the front, so it's right between, kind of right between the eyes. So just behind the eye and up. I was going to point with my nose, but it's probably not a good idea. So it's right on the head.
It's like right there.
I can't see where you're pointing, but I think so.
like
Yeah,
right there.
he's got it.
Yeah, so just behind the eyes and towards the top of the fish.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead, Ty.
So they only spawn like up at the fish hatchery? Is that where they only spawn?
No, so in most creeks along the coast, there'll be salmon along there. Like down at Willingdon Creek, there's fish in there now. Kelly Creek out where you guys are has chum and coho there too. And Whitall Creek close by has chum and coho as well. So most streams that haven't had too much negative impact from any human development will still have salmon spawning in them.
Okay.
Okay, Brooklyn's next.
Yeah.
How do they catch food?
How do they catch food? That's a good question. Depends on the species and depends on what they're eating. One of the main food sources for salmon on the coast is herring, which is a bait fish that's kind of 6 to 8 inches long, sometimes smaller when they're younger. Herring and a lot of bait fish tend to swim in tight schools. So what salmon will do to get fish out of that is they'll often dart through and try and stun and kind of disorient as many fish as they can with that. And then they'll circle back around and eat the fish that they did manage to stun. And yeah.
Okay, Ethan's next.
How do their fins move?
How do their fins move? That's a good question. There's a lot of, you can get very technical with it, but basically it's the same way that your brain makes your hands and your feet move. And it sends signals out on neurological pathways and how they actually move. So to move forward, the fish, let me get a better grip here. The main thing to move forward the fish will use is its tail, and its body kind of gyrates that way. And the fin moving side to side pushes water around, and that helps move the fish forward. If a fish is sitting in the river, it'll use all of the fins on the bottom of it, and that's what helps balance it out. So it'll use the front fins and the pelvic fins and the pectoral fins, and that helps balance them. And they'll do little kind of micro adjustments, just like if you were trying to keep your balance, how you can use your arms to help balance yourself. A fish will do that in the water column.
Okay, we got one more for you right now.
Yeah.
Owen's gonna come next, and then we'll do the rest in a minute.
Do fish have bones on their tails?
Fish have most of the bones end just at the back of their spine, but they do have cartilage and kind of bone-like things in them. So the tail is still pretty stiff. It's not floppy, and it'll be able to push a fair amount of water that way.
Oh, I don't.
Right on. Yeah, I'll take your question now. Yeah.
There's all kinds of fish like there's like in lakes, ocean, and there's mostly in like catfish.
Yeah.
And other fish. I know. I don't know the names.
Yeah, there's tons of fish, and that's always the neat thing with the ocean. And the ocean is so deep that they're still discovering new species of fish all the time. So that's always neat. Lots of fish.
And the fish go down for like a little hole, and they plant their like little babies there.
Yeah, so exactly. So what the salmon will do in the river, the female salmon generally will dig what's called a red, which is kind of like a nest made of gravel. So she'll dig a hole in the gravel and will lay her eggs in there, and the male will fertilize the eggs simultaneously. And then she'll cover those eggs back up again with the gravel. And it's important that the gravel's not too fine or not too coarse. If it's too sandy of like a substrate, then the eggs that she laid won't be able to get oxygen, which they need to survive. And if it's too coarse, then they tend to fall out. So usually the salmon will try and pick a perfect spot with nice kind of toony-loony and a little bit bigger size of pebbles, and bury her eggs in that, and then they can keep getting fresh water and air out of that water.
Okay,
Yeah. Right on.
One more
Look
here.
up. Oh, sorry, what?
Question here, Ty?
Yeah.
Okay.
So when they're getting attacked, do they swim as fast as they can?
Basically, yeah. So if a salmon does have a few predators in the wild. So seals being one of them, resident killer whales, sea lions, as well as people are all things that do try and eat salmon.
Yeah, because salmon, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So people go out and fish for them a lot. And yeah, so usually when a salmon's in danger, you'll probably learn more coming up about called fight or flight response. And generally salmon's instinct is to get as far away from what's attacking them as possible. Sometimes that's by swimming erratically. Other times it's just going as fast as they can out of there.
Okay.
Yeah. Good question.
I love smoked salmon.
Yeah, one.
Smoked salmon's great.
Got you in here.
Do they have like a natural defense routine? Like sort of like they have like, you know how the zebra has the zigzag? They have like this natural defense way to get away from predators and stuff like the zebra does?
That's a good question. That I don't know offhand if they have something that they all always do. There's a few things like salmon are, when they're in the ocean, are quite silver and quite bright, which is actually good because most predators will attack from the bottom, and the lighter the fish is, it matches more kind of how the sky looks from above. So they do camouflage in a bit that way in the water column. And then the backs of the fish are usually a darker color. So anything from above, any bird, it looks like it's looking just down to the bottom of the ocean. So they do have some camouflage as a defense mechanism. And then the rest of the time, they just try and stay in areas that don't have a lot of predators. So avoidance is definitely a key. Right on. Great question.
Are you going to keep dissecting?
I was going to show one more thing.
Sure.
Just basically, I think we looked at most of the organs. The only other one, which a lot of people call just the bloodline on the fish, is actually the fish's kidneys, which is what runs along the back. So 1 second and I'll show you what I'm talking about.
And then we'll do the questions. I know Ty and Reese have a question.
It's like the light about toxic.
We are going to do a little bit of a read first. And then, it'll be a short one. I have something I want to show you guys.
So I'm not sure how well you're going to be able to see this. It's usually what people think. It can't really cut it out, but it's generally what people think and call a bloodline if they're cleaning a fish. So it runs right along the spine of the fish, and you can see it is that dark red color in there. And that's actually the fish's kidney, and kidney is what the fish use to filter their blood and be able to get toxins out of it. Yeah. Not as cool as the other organs on film, but still neat nonetheless. One other thing I can show you quick it's not as much to do with the adult, but it's to do with the babies. So right now, we just took eggs from that female chum, and at this point we call them green eggs, which would be like this little cylinder here. In about another 2 weeks, they turn into what we call eyed eggs, and you can actually start to see there the eyes on the eggs developing, and that's the fish growing inside the little eggshell. And then the next stage is called an alevin, which is the first time those fish start to swim. And you can see the tails there, and they're actually relatively free swimming at that point, but we'll continue to feed off the nutrients of the egg sac there until that's all gone. And then they turn into little fry like that and go through a process of what's called kind of buttoning up, which is where the egg sac gets fully absorbed and then their full stomach closes in around it.
Okay, go ahead, Reese.
Oh yeah.
How big are their hearts? Can they get bigger?
Yeah, so, well, the bigger the fish, the bigger the heart, generally speaking. So chum are on average the second largest of the Pacific salmon species, but Chinook salmon can get up to 100 pounds. So they can get, I don't know, probably about this big, give or take. And the hearts on those would be larger. The female we did today, so that's that, it's hard again, is probably just about a 10-pound fish, but they can get quite a bit bigger than that for chum and for other species as well. So they definitely can get bigger, yeah.
Got another question for you here.
Yeah.
I actually have two.
I had two questions. My dad, he was fishing, and my dad caught a fish it was that big. It was like really big.
Right on.
Really big fish.
Yeah.
And the question I was asking, so what are the predators for the babies, like the eggs?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So there's predators, and then there's other issues as well that face the eggs when they're in the water. So one of the really important things with water in the streams is temperature and the purity of the water. So the warmer the water and the dirtier the water means there's more likely of the eggs getting a fungal infection. And what happens if one egg gets a fungal infection in the red in the nest, it can pass that to any eggs that's touching it. So a lot of times that can be where the biggest kind of mortality comes from in the wild, is if one of the eggs gets infected. Outside of that, a lot of little aquatic insects will feed on the eggs, as well as juvenile trout and juvenile salmon. If any of the eggs come loose out of the nest, then the cutthroat trout and usually coho yearling will feed on the eggs as well. And birds love it. So any kind of diving bird like the American dipper, some seagulls, will all try and eat the eggs. And the same thing goes for alevin and fry. They'll often get targeted by the same species, some cutthroat trout and birds, to fill their stomach.
And were those fish that you're showing us in those little bottles, were they real?
Yeah, these were real. Yeah, so these are in a solution that keeps them kind of fresh. And somebody made this display up, and just so we can kind of show all the life stages at once. But these are 100% real.
Why are they not moving then?
They're not alive. So they are real, but they're preserved in kind of a formaldehyde solution, just so we can show people what they are.
So they're dead?
They are.
What?
That's a weird question.
Okay.
Falling backwards.
What happens when the egg What happens when the egg does get infected?
Yeah, so that's usually if the egg gets infected with fungal spores, so then it unfortunately does die. And there's a few different mechanisms to how it happens, but a lot of times occasionally the odd egg won't get fertilized when the male and female are mixing. And if that egg gets agitated, the interior kind of membrane of the egg will break, and that will often let water into that egg. And often in especially warmer water, there's lots of fungus in it. And then from there, that can spread, unfortunately, out to the other eggs. And that's what we do at the hatchery. A big part of my job is picking through eggs. So we do just right around 2 million eggs a year of Chinook, Chum, and Coho. We do a bunch of each. And once a week, we have to go through and pick out any eggs that have died to make sure that they don't infect and hurt any other eggs.
Are there any other questions here today? We're doing really well. I'm impressed.
This is fantastic. Yeah. One other thing you guys can check out. I know I showed you the not living version, but we do have that live stream up. So we have some Chinook eggs up there, which will be hatching out in about a week or a week and a half into A-living. And that might be something to be able to check out in real time, kind of how the Chinook are growing. So that's Chinook from this year's egg takes. We would have done the egg takes about a month ago at this point of Chinook that came back to Land Creek there, and they'll be swimming pretty soon.
Yeah, that'll be cool. We'll definitely check that out. I think Reese has something.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can the brains get bigger than that?
Yeah, so we didn't. Well, the brains are kind of like the heart. They are proportionate to the size of the body. So the bigger the fish, the bigger the brain, generally speaking, too. So they can definitely get bigger.
Gavin, what question?
How big was the fish that we were dissecting?
Yeah. So the male we looked at here, this is probably right around 10 pounds. And the female's a little bit smaller. And they can get, chum salmon can get up to around 20 pounds. So they can get about twice as big as this guy. And then Chinook can get very, very, very large. Yeah.
How do the fishes get out of the eggs?
How do they get out the eggs?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's what we looked at, that little bit of a swim bladder in there earlier, which is a membrane the fish can fill up with air to kind of help control its buoyancy. But what it also does is help fill the empty space in the body cavity of the fish and helps put pressure on the eggs to release them. And in the natural system, let me see if I can. This is a male, so it wouldn't come out of the male, but so this is the anal fin here. Right below it, it has what's called a vent. So it has a little opening, and it would push eggs out of that.
How far can they swim?
A very, very long way. So a lot of chum salmon and sockeye salmon will swim up all the way to the Gulf of Alaska, which is a very long ways from here. And then in kind of they usually live 4 to 5 years. In the last year of their life cycle, they swim back and make their way to their natal stream, which is the stream they were born in. So they basically, from the day they hatch until the day they die, they never stop swimming. So long, long ways.
That's a good lesson for life. Never stop swimming. Thank you. How are we doing? Do we have more questions? We've had lots of really good answers. I don't think there's no more
Lots of great questions.
Yeah, super questions. George, do you have another one?
Yeah.
Yeah, go for it.
How do they cross the whole land, but how they get food when they get to Alaska? How do they just stop fish? You just stop, or they go down and eat, and then they come back up and go fast?
Yeah. So it depends on their food source, but they'll keep feeding the whole way up there. So when a chum salmon leaves the river, it's only about 3 grams. So it's only about, I don't know, 2 or 3 inches long at biggest. And those fish will move pretty slowly, but will keep working their way up there, and they'll stay in a lot more shallow of water, and will be eating even more zooplanktons, and then eventually into krill and bait fish. The bigger fish, once they're kind of up to the Gulf of Alaska, will feed all over the place. Chum do tend to sit deeper in the water column, like usually over 100 feet of water at least, and they'll sit deeper and feed there. Whereas coho and chinook will sometimes sit in a lot shallower of water.
Yeah.
Right on. I think that answered your question.
Yeah.
Perfect.
One last one for you.
Right on.
Can it swim like to a different country?
Yeah. So they definitely can swim to a different country. There's no real borders on the ocean. So the fish will kind of swim where they feel like going and where the food source is mainly. And a lot of the food source is up in that big open area between Russia and Alaska and the Gulf of Alaska. So they can end up in Russia, they can end up in American water, and they can stay in Canadian water too.
And why do they hide their eggs?
Well, they hide their eggs to keep them alive, basically. So if the eggs just sat on the surface, then all sorts of fish and birds would keep pecking at them and eat them all up. So they bury their eggs kind of like treasure, just deep enough to keep them out of harm's way. But they still need to be shallow enough that fresh water can circulate through the gravel and get oxygen to the eggs. So it's usually just to protect them.
And how do they breathe underwater?
Yeah, so that's what their gills do. So there's dissolved oxygen. So the oxygen in the air we breathe can be as a kind of almost in a liquid gaseous state in the water. And they use those gills we looked at to filter dissolved oxygen out of there, which there's a whole process they use. But that gets oxygen out of the water, and that goes into their blood. Yeah.
Another one?
Right on.
I think we have one very last one coming up, and then I think we're gonna have to
All right.
move on. Okay, I think we forgot our last question.
No worries.
That was way better than expected by Zoom, so thank you.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
surprisingly painless. That's good.
yeah, they were very well engaged, so thank you very much for your
Bye,
time.
Mr. Zoom.
No worries. Thank you guys for being such great listeners. And yeah, it's great meeting you all over Zoom.
Great. Thank you for doing that for us. Do you guys want to come stick your heads in here
No
and say
worries.
bye?
Bye, Mr. Zoom.
Later.
Bye, Mr. Zoom. Bye, Zoom.
Bye.
Bye.
Great listening today, guys. And
Thank you.
you're very welcome. Thank you, guys. You're great listeners. And have a great day. And hopefully we'll see you next year out there.